Hello, everyone, and welcome. And I'm so glad that you're here to talk about what is new and what is relevant in the travel industry. As you may know, Travel One hosts these forums twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. This is now our second virtual forum, and there's a good part of me that longs for the days when we can have these together in person. But there's also a good part of me that appreciates how we're pivoting and how we're making changes during COVID. And there's a good part of me that appreciates the higher level of participation that we get in virtual meetings. So there are pros and cons to both, right? But I do know that in due time, we'll all make it through this crisis together. So I read an article recently that said we're in the middle of both a pandemic and an infodemic. And by infodemic, the author meant there's so much information that's out there, it's hard to keep it all straight, frankly. And so part of our role as your travel management partner is to bring clarity to all of that information, to talk about what has changed and talk about an industry where there's lots of information that's changing. It's the travel industry, and how all of this information may affect your travel program. So we know for a good number of the companies that are on this call that some of you have been traveling throughout the pandemic. We know some of you, frankly, aren't traveling at all yet, haven't restarted travel. And we know some of you are just now, I would say, re-dipping your toe back into travel. So each company has its own culture. It depends on your industry. It depends on the comfort level within that company. But our goal for today really is that when your company is ready to travel, so when that is right for you and your company, we want you to be aware of all of the safety and cleanliness protocols that have been developed and, frankly, that are here to stay. They're not going away. So all of the safety and cleanliness protocols that have been developed, and also to rebuild some confidence in the travel industry. And really, for many of our partners like Delta and Enterprise and Hilton, I mean, traveler safety has always been priority number one. But I think what's new is that cleanliness is now a clear number two. So as we talk through today, we'll discuss the entire trip, really from curb to curb in the travel ribbon. And by that, we mean from arriving at the airport to being on the aircraft, to arriving at your destination airport, to getting your rental car, and then being at your hotel. And we'll talk through all the different layers of protection that are there to mitigate risk. So each partner has developed really their own safety protocols. And today we've invited Delta and Enterprise and Hilton to really speak about theirs. So I'm going to take a moment and introduce our speakers and go through. We've got three wonderful speakers today. First will be Michael Bowerly, who is the general manager of the Central Region Global Sales for Delta, KLM, and Air France. Michael is based in the Twin Cities. And one thing about Michael, he's been traveling. So he'll bring a perspective of somebody who has been traveling a couple of times over the last few months. And then once Michael is done, we'll transition to Rick Williams, who is the corporate business rental manager for Enterprise Holdings. And as you may know, their headquarters are in St. Louis, so that is where Rick is joining us from. And Rick has 23 years of experience with Enterprise, so look forward to hearing from Rick and learning about Enterprise. And then when we pass from the rental car onto the hotel, we'll transition to John Kennedy, who's the Director of Travel Management Partnerships for Hilton. And we were joking with John because his middle name does start with an F, so it truly is JFK, although it's not Fitzgerald. So, but John will talk about Hilton, and he is joining us today from Atlanta. And then, of course, we will have time as much as possible for Q&A, again, via chat. So we look forward to seeing your questions in the chat box. And at this time, I want to introduce Michael Bowerly, who again from Delta, KLM, and Air France will talk about the health and safety protocols that have been implemented by Delta Airlines. So Michael, take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you for this opportunity to present today. I'm just going to get our presentation up here on the thing. Does everybody see the presentation with an aircraft at the beginning?
Indeed. Indeed,
wonderful. This is one area I'm not an expert in, and I don't look to be an expert in this area. I look for that face-to-face interaction as you were talking about, Bill, and that's what we're really here today to talk about. So thank you all for joining. Today, I'd like to talk to you about what Delta is doing to ensure a safer travel experience for you and all your travelers. And we'll kick things off here by talking about the Delta Care Standard. This is really our pillar or our mantra moving forward is what we want to do. Delta has always prided itself as being an airline focused on cleanliness. However, with the COVID pandemic, we've taken things to the next level. We set up 4 pillars surrounding the Delta Care Standard, that being cleanliness, more space, safer service and care, and flexibility. We're so dedicated to this Delta Care Standard that we've actually set up a dedicated team within our organization, which is headed up by Mike Meridos, our VP of Global Cleanliness. And he's really focusing him and his team around the rigor of the data that we're looking at, testing and tracking to all the cleanliness. This is something that you're not going to see disappear, as Bill referenced a little bit earlier in his opening remarks. The care standard is here to stay with Delta moving forward, and we take it very seriously. In fact, we're engaging stakeholders outside of Delta who are the experts, such as Mayo, TSA, RB Lysol, just to name a few. We were one of the first airlines out there to start electrostatically spraying. And when I reference electrostatically spraying, that's spraying what we call a matrix 3 solution, very similar to what you would find in a hospital, that cleans and disinfects. And this electrostatically spraying really allows fine particles to attach to everything within the spray area. So I'll reference that many times throughout the presentation. Through this pandemic, we're also focused on flexibility. We've extended medallion status for most travelers for another year. We're offering change fees and extensions for many of the tickets that they're in possession of. We're also working with our partner airlines who are doing similar things to what we are doing today. And we're sharing best practices, not just with our partners, but also with the industry. We're a member of the Airlines for America, and we're sharing things that we're doing with them because as a whole, we look at this as an industry need. We need to build confidence in our travelers to get back on planes and start traveling again. So we're sharing our best practice with them as well. Granted, we might do a few things to differentiate ourselves from our competition, but the focus here really is to get everybody back on planes, feeling safe and traveling again. Today, the presentation you're going to see and hear is really focused on the travel ribbon, as Bill alluded to, from curb to claim. We have an infographic that actually demonstrates all this on delta.com, but I've adapted that presentation to really show how it looks at Minneapolis Airport. Many of you are based here locally or use Minneapolis as a transit point, so I thought it would really be an opportunity to kind of show you firsthand what's going on. One last thing before we kick things off, we did have Mayo come out and tour our travel ribbon from the curb to claim scenario to say, hey, what can we do better? We're looking to the experts to what we can do better. They came back and said they think everything we're doing is great. They've had very little to no feedback, but that doesn't mean we're going to not constantly involve. We're always looking for feedback on ways that we can constantly improve the process. So let's kick things off. We got a lot of things to cover here real quick. So before you go, as you're sitting at home or in your office preparing for your trip, some things you need to know is that the TSA has made an exception to the 3-ounce liquid policy. They're now allowing a 12-ounce bottle of hand sanitizer. You'll need to take this out separately when going through security, but that is allowed. We're recommending people to use the Delta Fly app. The goal here is less touch points. We're using this as a communication vehicle to let you know what's going on about your flight, as it's being cleaned, ready for boarding, anything along the way. Use it as your boarding pass. We're trying to eliminate the need to have to exchange one document to another human and back. Review travel requirements for your destination. As many of you have heard, New York, Hawaii, and some international destinations have some protocols that need to be filed. Delta doesn't enforce those protocols unless the government requires us to do so. So in the cases like New York and Hawaii, the traveler is on their own, but need to understand what they're getting into when they're going to these places, as many require a 14-day quarantine or a self-quarantine. Travel One has resources on their online booking tool, their website, and via their agent. And we also have resources on delta.com. One other thing to note as you prepare for your trip, you'll need a mask throughout the journey, and food options at the airport and on board can be limited. So you might want to consider packing something and bringing something yourself. But keep in mind, you still have to go through TSA, and there are no further exceptions regarding food along those lines. So as you get to the airport, let's say you forgot your mask, we will have a mask for you. We have these packets free of charge, and in these packets, we call them our care packets. There is a mask, 2 Purell packages, and a little card about what we're doing to help keep travelers safe throughout their journey. So if your breaks, you forget it, just ask a Delta representative anywhere throughout the travel ribbon with Delta, and we'd be happy to provide one to you. We are asking that if you think you are an exception or you have a traveler with an exception of needing to wear a face mask, please arrive an extra hour early. We have set up a program with StatMD, which is part of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, where we arrange a one-on-one consultation between the passenger and StatMD. They have a conversation, and the conversation, they talk to the Delta representative and give us the thumbs up or thumbs down about the exception. If the traveler is required to wear a mask and they wish not to do so, we'll work with them flexibility once again to see about what we can do to get them on another flight, another date, or get them to wear the actual mask. One other item to note is that we are doing employee testing at our locations. In fact, at Minneapolis Airport, everyone needs to be checked on a daily basis when they report to work for a temperature check. If they're over 100.4, then they get sent home, and we work with them accordingly to ensure they're taken care of. So here you'll see one of the first pictures when you get to the airport, the kiosk check-in area. As you can see, the little construction going on there in the background. One thing I do want to point out as we go through this journey is Delta can only enforce and take care of those areas that are owned by Delta. The Metropolitan Airport Commission takes care of the common areas. However, both we and them do electrostatically spraying every night in the common areas and in our areas. So just because it's not Delta, don't think it's not being cleaned. The airport is doing a great job on that. The kiosks, they're frequently being cleaned and wiped down with Matrix 3, that hospital-grade solution I mentioned to you about. There are hand sanitizer stations, as you can see in the picture there at the front of each of the rows of kiosks. We have those stations throughout the airport in high traffic and high touch locations. The Metropolitan Airport also has their own, but you're probably more likely to see a Delta one. But between the two of us, you probably can't go more than 10 feet without seeing a hand sanitizer station. And masks are required by Delta customers and Metropolitan Airport employees at Minneapolis. On the left-hand side there, you'll see a sample of the plexiglass we've installed at all of our locations where there's interaction between the employee and the agent at a countertop. These plexiglass stations were developed and designed by our team down in Atlanta. Over on the, you'll see right there between the two plexiglass, another sanitation station, as I mentioned earlier. And if you look on the right-hand side, we're doing a lot of marking of the floors, the walls, and areas throughout the airport to help remind people of social distancing. We're creatures of habit. We start getting in line for queuing at the airport, people start getting together. We're trying to leave as many reminders as possible so there's less confrontation. One item I'd like to note about the Minneapolis airport is that the Airport Commission is circulating the air more frequently than it has in the past. And currently the lobby area is being rotated about every 10 minutes. Heading on to the TSA, don't really have pictures here just because it's a kind of a government area, but things to note here, once again, face masks required. TSA staff are wearing their face masks. They also have gloves. They're enforcing distancing. You may notice that every other station or lane may be open to help facilitate that. Mention the 12-ounce hand sanitizer. You'll have to remove that before screening. And just recently, earlier this month, we, Delta, worked with the TSA to facilitate some new antimicrobial bins. They're being used currently at Minneapolis and 4 other airports, being Atlanta, LA, LaGuardia, and JFK. This doesn't kill the virus, but it prevents the growth of bacteria and other microbials. It's just another layer that we're looking to do. What can we do to help facilitate cleanliness at every point through the travel ribbon as possible? The Sky Club, for those that you do use a Sky Club, we've consolidated them. They're not all open. We are reopening them as demand grows. We are electrostatically spraying them every night. And similar to the check-in area, we have plexiglass shields, hand sanitizer location, face masks available for the travelers if needed, continuous cleaning, floor decals, touchless check-in. You can use your phone or use your card. We do have, where we had showers in some locations like Atlanta, we've discontinued those temporarily. And we have moved from a buffet style to an individually packed food selection to help facilitate lack of cross-contamination. So as you see on your screen there, individually packed containers. We do also offer some hot offerings like soups and noodles where you can add some hot water and also have a hot selection. This has been very well received from our customers based on our net promoter scores, not just for the Sky Club, but for the whole Delta Travel Ribbon experience. We're seeing net promoter scores in the mid-70s, which is just amazing and unheard of. So after the Sky Club, you head down to the gate in the boarding area. A lot of things to notate here. Masks still required. The air exchange has also been increased, somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, depending where you are in the airport. There are older sections versus newer sections. They are just maxing out the system where they can. We are constantly electrostatically spraying these areas, including the gate area and jet bridges. You'll see those plexiglass shields once again, the hand sanitizer, floor decals. We have additional cleaning supplies at the gate so we can do spot cleaning as needed, frequently wiping down the counters. Notifications. While you're in the gate area, there's several ways to receive notifications. One is the app, as I mentioned, but we're also using our monitors. If you see the screen up in the upper left-hand corner next to the gate number of C26, we're using that monitor not just to reconfirm where you're going, but we're also showing videos of how we're electrostatically spraying our aircraft and other things we're doing to keep the travelers safe. But we're also putting notifications up there like your aircraft is currently being cleaned. Your aircraft is now completed being cleaned and will begin to board shortly. So we're really trying to keep the passenger informed for what's going on so they know what's going on. When it comes to boarding, our gate agents are boarding the aircraft from back to front, about 10 at a time. It will vary on flight about what row they call. What they're really doing is looking at the seat map, seeing where there's 10 people, calling those rows and doing it one cycle after the other until the entire aircraft is boarded. So once again, boarding back to front. However, boarding will not start until we have a 44-point checklist signed off by the cleaners, the lead flight attendant, and the gate agent. If anyone feels that any of those 44 points have not been completed or meet the standards of our care standard, we will call the cleaning team back to ensure that that aircraft meets standards before we commence the boarding process. In the waiting area, you will see placards on the seats, as you see on the picture on your left. However, we are not enforcing that because there are families that do travel together. We're not going to force families to split apart, or there could be couples. Once again, social reminders about distancing. As the same as what you see on the right, which is inside of one of our jetways. We have placards within the jetways, also reminding people to allow some extra space. In our jetways, we've also upgraded our filtration systems. We're now using MERV 14 filters, which is a 40% reduction in air particulates from what we've had in the past. And then once you're on the plane, here's a picture on your left of someone actually electrostatically spraying the plane. And when we spray an aircraft, we do everything: the bins, the seats, the shades, the tray tables, you name it. If it's on the airplane, we're spraying it. The only area we're not spraying is the cockpit, just due to sensitivity of electronics. There's another procedure for that. As you see on the right, we're in the process of adding Purell sanitizer bottles on our aircraft, focusing on the lavatory and boarding door area. And there is continuous cleaning throughout the flight, including the flight attendants are now paying a little extra attention to the lav areas with some wipe downs. And the flight attendants are making announcements regarding safe distancing for the labs. As you've all probably have experienced, on those longer flights, people start congregating around the lab. We're really discouraging that because 9 times out of 10, that means someone's standing next to somebody sitting in a seat. So we're really trying to encourage social distancing on the aircraft. In addition, while you're on the plane, as I mentioned earlier, we are blocking the middle seat. That is something we are committed to between now and January. We don't make money doing this, but really this is to build customer confidence. We put safety in front of profits at this point in time, and we're very serious about that. In first class, we're blocking 50% of the seats, so it's every other seat that's available. However, in the back, we are allowing families to sit together or those traveling the same reservation. So if you do see someone sitting in the middle seat, most likely it's a family, could be a couple who have asked to seat together. We do not require people to sit together by any means. As you see in the picture in the upper right-hand corner, when you board the aircraft, you'll be handed a Purell sanitation wipe during the boarding process. We also have those care kits on board. The face mask and the sanitizing wipes are also available upon request or for breaks while you're on board. Food, our goal here is once again to reduce touch points. Domestically, you'll receive a little baggie with a bottle of water, 2 snacks, a napkin, and a sanitation wipe as well. In first class in Delta One, which is primarily the longer haul flights, you'll receive a fuel box. These might be the boxes that you remember being on board where you could purchase. They're full of some snacks and other munchies, shall we say. Those are being served in first class in Delta One. Beer, wine are being only served in first class and comfort plus on flights over 900 miles. We're not serving main cabin because we're trying to reduce touch points. We don't want to get involved with touching credit cards and handing them back and forth. So for the time being right now, beer and wine are only being served when it's complimentary, and that's primarily in first class and comfort plus. You're welcome to bring your own food on board. Just don't forget about the TSA rules and regulations if you're bringing it from home. And entertainment is still being utilized, so you can still watch your free movies, text free of charge, or if you want to take part with the internet, feel free to do so. As far as the air filtration on the aircraft, I learned a lot of this going through the COVID crisis that we're all experiencing right now. I always thought I was one who was getting sick on the airplane based on being on an airplane with 150 other my closest friends. The reality is our air circulation on an aircraft does not move from the front from the front of the aircraft to the back of the aircraft. Actually, it starts at the bottom with a HEPA filter, goes up the sidewalls, then out the ceiling or the nozzles that are right above you, across you, down to the floor, and back out. We recommend that you keep the nozzles open as that disrupts the air and keeps the air flowing directly over you from head to toe versus from front to back where you might be other people. So it keeps clean air on you at all times. And we are circulating air on our aircraft about every 2 to 5 minutes, of which 50% of that is going through the filter system. The other 50% is from the outside air. And let me tell you, when it's minus 35 degrees outside, there's not much living out there. So good clean air coming in. And these HEPA filters are so good, they're actually filtering out 99.99% of the particulates. So the air you have on board the aircraft coming across you is as good as what you would find in a hospital room. We're replacing these HEPA filters twice as often as the manufacturer recommends. So really making a big push to ensure that it's as safe as possible and as clean as possible for our travelers. And then when it comes to deplaning the aircraft, the flight attendant is making announcements to allow 10 people at a time to get off and to allow social distancing on that. And last but not least, the baggage claim area. No picture here. If you've been to Minneapolis, you know the baggage claim area is under construction, kind of changes on a daily basis. But similar to what you've heard already, mask required, electrostatic spraying going on, floor decals to remind for distancing, hand sanitizer stations. If you need to go to the bag office, which would be very rare because we very rarely lose a bag anymore, they're being wiped down. They have the plexiglass shields and really making a push to ensure that once you get your bag, you're on your way and you've had a clean and enjoyable experience. So this may be the end of your journey on Delta, but it's not the end of the clean journey for Delta. We're constantly looking for ways to improve. Any feedback you have to help us become better is greatly appreciated. So now that you have your bags, it's off to pick up your rental car with Enterprise and National, and I'll hand it back over to you, Bill.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you. Lots of very good information. A reminder to everybody, we are recording this and we'll be sharing all of this information and sharing the slides. So thank you, Michael. And as you said, it's now time to go pick up your rental car. So I'm going to turn it over to Rick Williams, who's the Corporate Business Rental Manager at Enterprise Holdings. And Rick, tell us about the rental car industry and Enterprise.
Bill, thank you very much. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right and see my screen. Bill, can you confirm that for me?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, I'm thrilled to be here to talk about the car rental industry, but also talk about kind of the return to travel as you guys are looking at your travel plans and what we can all do, including what Michael said about making sure to build traveler confidence. I'm going to do a brief update on the car rental industry as a whole, talk about the enterprise holdings journey, where we were when the pandemic started, where we are now, and kind of where we're going. So I know we're going to be tight on time, so I'm just going to get going. I know the slides are going to be shared, and I know there's going to be time for question afterwards. So not unlike other parts of, excuse me, the travel industry as a whole, obviously there were a number of factors that came along with this pandemic. Not only the commercial travel side was disrupted, but also other traditional customer segments such as the retail side, any type of replacement needs that we're seeing, that market was effectively cut off once the pandemic stopped and we were kind of all in a quarantine mode. We also recognize that there are a number of customer expectations that are changing throughout this journey. And so as we look at that, that's creating some type of opportunity for us, but also at the same point in time, to build that confidence, we have to make sure that we change our expectation on how customers interact with us. While our industry certainly has a long road ahead, we're encouraged by some of the early signs that we're seeing. We believe that there's pent-up demand. We believe that people will look for ways to get back on the road. I know Bill had mentioned at the start about the want and the longing to be face-to-face for this type of meeting. I think that that's something that we're seeing across the industry as a whole, that as we get back to this, there is an opportunity. What you can see on the screen is early on in the pandemic, we have an EHI renter sentiment task force that we rely on for information, and there was some level of comfort with car rental. Obviously, part of our goal is to continue to increase our ability to build confidence, not only in the car rental side, but in the travel sector as a whole. One of the things I wanted to kind of pull from were a couple of studies that have been recently done, and what does a return to travel look like? We understand that different companies have different timelines, and your timeline may not look the same as your peer. There were a couple of interesting things that were promoted in BTN. This one showing that at the time of the survey, roughly 67% of travelers in the small and medium space were ready to get back to travel, kind of speaking to that pent-up demand. But one of the other things that was interesting is the increased involvement of other layers of senior leadership in the travel spectrum to make sure that not only are they looking at the vendors that they're using and how they're going about it, but making sure that from a duty of care, from a safety standpoint, that senior leadership is involved in making those decisions, because it's such a personal thing going forward. And then once we talk about kind of the phased recovery of this, we needed to kind of look at what the insights are for the target audiences in this spectrum. And this is from an article in the Wall Street Journal, and I'm not going to go through obviously each and every bullet point, but there were some very interesting things that we saw when we were going through this. The increased focus on employee health and safety from the C-suite or from the decision makers inside of these corporations. It has changed, and it's become much more to the forefront. There's also a want from a stability standpoint, a stability with partners, a stability with their employees. And so we find that very interesting. And you can see the link below of the link to the Wall Street Journal article. Obviously, on the corporate travel manager side, what has always been a challenge for the most part is dealing with evolving travel policies, compliance, duty of care, all of those things, truthfully, has gotten a little bit more difficult. And I think, what we're seeing from the industry standpoint is the vendors in conjunction with those customers, along with Travel One, have got to be involved in that conversation to make sure that you all are as up to date as possible on the current whether it's regulations or challenges that you're faced with from a travel policy. We have seen some, in the early returns, a little bit of a change in some traveler behavior in a drive versus fly for the short term. We don't see this as a long-term thing. We all look for and can't wait for the time that the airports and the airlines and companies like Delta are flying full again and everybody feels confident. But in the near term, in the immediate, there were some changes and shifts in traveler behavior. So, all of this is just to kind of give you all some insight into what we're seeing from the industry as a whole. And with that, I'm going to now kind of transition to Enterprise Holdings and what we're doing and kind of how we're looking at it. So from the Enterprise Holdings perspective, we've looked at this pandemic essentially really in three shapes. We had the react phase, which was kind of at the immediate. It was, what did we have to do to ensure employee and renter safety as soon as the pandemic happened? As an essential supplier to vehicles, we had to make sure we were available. Then we have to look at it from a reset standpoint. And this is what we need to do to be able to continue to build on the traveler confidence piece. And then we have to look at the reshape. What does this mean for us long term? How do we change with the customer expectations, how we interact with our customers at the rental branch? So you can see the picture and the quote from Chrissy Taylor. So I don't know if everybody is as familiar as maybe I am with the Enterprise story, but Chrissy's grandfather, Jack Taylor, founded the company in 1957 in St. Louis. And, we're thankful as Chrissy has come on to take on the president and CEO role in January of this year. It's so important for us as a family-owned company to make sure that we have a commitment from the senior leadership side that not only are we going to look at what we've done in the past, but utilizing our people and everything that we have at our touch points to bring a safe travel back to your travelers as they get going. So the first part, like I had mentioned, was the react. And so we had to react immediately as this pandemic started to take shape and states were reacting, the federal government was reacting. We had to remain open to support the essential services, the customers that we work with, the utilities, the federal government. This also started kind of our modified service offerings, where we started looking at curbside rental, delivery in certain areas as a way to ensure that we were trying to get vehicles to those that needed them at that time. And we adopted the slogan "On Call for All." After we got through the react phase, we then started to go into the reset phase. And I'm going to read real quick from a survey. There's an Oliver Wyman survey of roughly 4,600 consumers from Fords. It says travelers will have a new set of expectations and priorities when they return. While price will remain a driving force, especially with most major economies in recession or experience elevated levels of unemployment, consumers will be equally focused on health and safety measures. I think we can all agree that from our standpoint, as we were looking at resetting our expectations, we had to take into account what the consumers were worried about. And we also had to make sure that we were then translating that to the overall success of our ability to provide on our overall value proposition. Along with this reset came our Complete Clean Pledge. And so what the Complete Clean Pledge is for us is we're rethinking every step of the customer journey as it relates to the car rental piece. Obviously, clean cars have always been something that we have to be able to hit on and be able to provide. But obviously also in this pandemic, our ability to enhance the sanitizing, enhance the cleanliness and the overall security for the traveler is exceedingly important. While at the same point in time on the Enterprise brand, where you oftentimes saw a higher touch rental process, we have to move towards a low and or no touch rental process. And when I talk about the reshape, you're going to see some things that we're looking to include in the Enterprise business model that will match up and kind of marry up with what your travelers are experiencing from an Emerald Club standpoint. I felt it was important to illustrate. So obviously our traditional standard cleaning, that takes place, washing, vacuuming, cleaning out the vehicles is happening. But in conjunction with working with health authorities, both globally and in the US, we've looked at the 20 highest touch points that we need to make sure that we're hitting from a sanitizing standpoint every rental transaction, starting with the key fob, which is oftentimes the first thing that the customer touches, to the trunk release. And we won't go through all of 20 of the touch points, but understand that we've changed our training. We've altered how we handle the cleaning at both our airport and our home city offices. Important that we have this level of security and safety. What your travelers will see is they will see a checklist in the car that is signed off on, that the touch points have been sanitized. It will also have a signature of the individual who cleaned it, and it will also have a signature of the manager on duty at that time. Again, trying to breed the confidence for that traveler when they get into the vehicle. But it's more than just the vehicle for your travelers and for our customers. We had to then look at our branches and for our employees and for the shuttles that your travelers will be taking from the airport to the car rental. On the branch side, you'll see things like I'd already mentioned around the modifying the rental for our home city with curbside. We will also, and we have installed plexiglass counter shields for those individuals that have to interact with an employee, as well as signage to kind of remind them around the social distancing piece. All of our employees, you'll see it's mandated from a face mask and glove standpoint, as well as regular sanitizing processes for inside of the branch as well. We're trying to make sure that not only are the customers seeing that, but we also understand that there's a minimizing of interaction between the customer and employee. And I'm sure that there are probably questions as it relates to the shuttles. Couple of things to keep in mind with that. We are adhering to social distancing protocols on our shuttles, making sure that we have placards on seats, making sure that we have signs that are reminding travelers around the social distancing. We do sanitize high touch areas in between trips. So a driver will drop off folks at an airport to catch their plane, and before the driver will allow the travelers on, they will have to go through a sanitizing the high touch points. And then at that point in time, we're going to look to the social distancing protocols for those travelers getting on. For those shuttles that are consolidated, maybe an airport run shuttle, we've worked with obviously all the airport authorities in those jurisdictions where they have it. We all, as an industry, as a car rental industry, had conversations with those airports to ensure that the sanitizing process, the cleanliness process, and what they were doing from that standpoint at least was at a minimum at the expectation that we had for ourselves. And we're happy to report out everybody's pulling together with this, and we feel very good about where the shuttles are in the car cleanliness, or the cleanliness of those shuttles. And then we move to kind of the reshape, and this is kind of where we are today and kind of what the go forward is. We've seen, like I mentioned, some of the week over week increases in travel through airports and through our home city. So, again, we may have a long road ahead, but we're very encouraged with where we are. I also recognize that for our customer base, this is going to be a very uneven return to travel. And for us, this is the four key areas that we're focusing on in this reshape mode to ensure that we're delivering on travel confidence. Obviously, it's all about the partnership. It's about working together with health organizations and local communities to ensure that we're all looking forward to achieving one common goal. On the loyalty piece, this is the one thing that I would tell you, the loyalty and the technology piece do tend to go together in this reshape mode. Loyalty, yes, it's about recognizing those travelers and those customers that are supporting the brands. But as we set to reshape this, the loyalty may also be the entry point into the technology that will continue to deliver the low touch, the no touch rental process for those travelers. And so I would ask that those of you that do partner with us, now would be a great time to ensure and look at loyalty programs and make sure that our loyalty program is up to speed with your travelers, so they are set up to win in this kind of return to travel. We also recognize our service has to be at a high level in this reshape. It's always been that way, but especially as travel has decreased, it's so important for us as your provider or as a provider that we are there delivering on that service and value each and every time. In the reshape, for those customers that rent it with the national brand at the airport and they're Emerald Club members, they're already taking advantage of really a low touch rental process. An Emerald Club member who is getting off a shuttle gets to their own car, they select the car that they would like, they get to the exit booth, they hand their driver's license to that agent, and away they go. The challenge for us is now we have to kind of take the best parts of that and move that to the enterprise brand. And so what I'm about to show you is kind of where we're headed from the enterprise brand as we reshape the customer interaction with us. So your traveler will book obviously via Travel One or through the online booking tool, whether it be for a non-airport rental need, which customers do utilize us for as an alternative to their own vehicle, or it could be for our enterprise brand at an airport that they're traveling to. Once they make that reservation, the traveler themselves will have the option to remotely check in or check in once they arrive at the branch. And essentially the way you would need to think about it is they're taking care of some of those questions that they see or they interact with an employee around their rental transaction before they even arrive or before they interact with an employee at one of our offices. Once they complete the check-in, all they will have to do, much like they do today with their Emerald Club membership, they'll present their driver's license to an employee. And they will then start to complete the transaction that way. Once they present the driver's license, they'll go with that employee either to a covered lot or to the lot outside. They'll find the reserve car and they'll complete the vehicle condition report and also sign for their rental transaction on our Launchpad devices. And Launchpad essentially is a tablet-based device that will allow our employees to execute a rental transaction outside of the office at the car in a one-on-one scenario, thus minimizing the amount of overall contact. At that point in time, once the traveler gets that, they will then head to the exit and begin their trip. So trying to take the best elements of the Emerald Club process at the airport and bringing it to the enterprise brand at the airport or to the enterprise brand in the home city. So I guess I would close by saying when you're ready, we're ready. I would just take a minute and say for those of you that have used our brands in the past or are using our brands currently, I just want to say thank you for that. We greatly appreciate your confidence, and we look forward to building your traveler confidence as we go forward. So I know there's time for questions at the end. Bill, I'm going to hand it back to you and let you take us over to Hilton now that you've driven to your hotel.
That's right. So thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate all the information. And we're in our rental car. We're on our way to our Hilton Hotel. And I'm going to turn it over to John Kennedy to talk to us about Hilton and their safety and their health protocols. So, John, take it away, please.
Great. Bill, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, John. Thanks.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Great. Well, thanks so much for having me today. Really want to just, share the sentiment that, every part of our industry, whether it is the flight, the rental car, or the hotel stay, every company is doing something to address the cleanliness perspective, because we know that that's what we need to get right to make sure that travelers feel comfortable traveling again, which is, having a significant impact not just on our industry, but on the economy overall. One of the things that we've done at Hilton was when we discovered that this pandemic was going to, started to expand and there was going to be issues, we said, we really need to come up with protocols that go above and beyond what we already have. So we reached out to the Mayo Clinic and worked with them on developing a program, and then also partnered with the makers of Lysol from a product perspective to create the Hilton Clean Stay program. And that program impacts not just the guest room, but it's really the entire guest experience. We use Lysol here in the U.S. There's another product that RB, the makers of Lysol, has outside the United States. So this is something that is implemented in all of our hotels globally. Really, for us, we approached it as the journey, the traveler's journey, from the time before they even get to the hotel till the time they leave. So the guests will receive pre-arrival messaging. I just traveled, as a matter of fact, over the Labor Day holiday. Michael, I took a Delta flight and experienced everything that you showed on your presentation. It was a great experience. And then I stayed at one of our hotels in Florida, and I received that pre-arrival message letting me know what to expect when I arrived at the hotel from a clean stay perspective, reminding me to wear my mask in all public areas. When before arriving to the hotel, I used our contactless check-in through our loyalty app, which is the Hilton Honors app. And I was able to simply choose my room. We have digital key at the majority of all of our hotels in North America. And that's where you use your phone as the key to unlock your guest room door, as well as even, for example, in the fitness center, the phone will unlock the doors there as well. In all the public spaces, we have sanitizing stations. Lobby furniture has been moved or removed to accommodate physical distancing. There's placards and markers on the floor reminding everyone to keep your distance if you are going to wait for to actually check in at the front desk. For those guests that choose to use the in-person check-in method, there's plexiglass barriers between the front desk staff. They're all wearing masks. Even in the elevators, when you get to the elevators, there's sanitizing stations there. And again, it's not just as you get to the guest room. Once you do get to our guest room, we have a whole protocol that is in play in the room. The one thing that guests will see is that the Clean Stay sticker is on the room, and it's a seal that is then broken when you open the door. So your travelers will know that room, the last person that was in there was housekeeping, that they have finished cleaning the room up to the Clean Stay standards. Those standards I'll show you on another slide here in a moment. But as I mentioned, it's not just the guest room. The fitness centers have been had extra hand sanitizing stations. There's more frequent cleaning taking place in all public areas. My experience in our fitness center when I was in Florida over the holiday was that every other cardio piece of equipment was blocked off. Again, to encourage that distancing between guests. Your travelers are going to notice something different on the food and beverage side, whether it's at our focused service brands such as Hampton Inn, or at a full service brand, whether that be Hilton, the DoubleTree, or Waldorf. The focused service brands, where typically you had a guest that could come down and help themselves to the buffet style complimentary breakfast, that's been replaced with grab and go. And we're making sure that the attendant is putting those boxes out. So again, there's no contact taking place between guests. In instances where it's our restaurants are open, again, following local ordinance, as well as making sure that all the distancing is taking place. Also room service, where it is allowed to be to continue. It's really more of a delivery service. The staff is not going into the guest room. They will bring your items to your door and leave them hanging outside your door on the doorknob there, so that again there's no interaction. Of course, if you have the Honors app and you used your contactless check-in, you can do the same for checkout. And then the hotel shuttle. I think similarly to what Rick was saying with Enterprise, was that our shuttles have a protocol of making sure that they're wiping everything down before they're transporting a guest to wherever it is that they're going, and they're keeping that log in there, and so that also having some sanitizing products as well. So again, trying to maintain the entire cleanliness process, really from pre-arrival till the guest leaves the property, trying to make sure that your travelers feel comfortable as they come back to travel. I won't go through all of these points, but again, when we partnered with Mayo and Lysol, we came up with these 10 areas to make sure that we were really deep cleaning them in the guest room. And I think just some of the items to touch on that maybe we never thought of before was, for example, the safe and the iron, making sure that everything is getting completely wiped down and sanitized in the room, including the drapery hand pulls, those wands that are there, really just every aspect of the room. Something that we've piloted this last year, and you may have heard of this. We have, I think, 15 properties right now that have what we call our connected room. And that basically allows you to use the Hilton Honors app as your TV remote control, for example, for the thermostat to turn the lights on and off. So again, it's taking that contactless experience to the next level. This is a brand standard in our motto brands moving forward. And we've had more and more ownership, property ownership, inquiring about this now, because I think everyone's looking and seeing that, again, this is just one more aspect of the experience that I think is going to last beyond when we get COVID under control, as around the globe. I think there's going to be certain benefits that people get used to. So definitely could see the connected room really expanding. I mentioned the Honors app, and that's really part of the connected experience. I've touched on many of these where, again, you can choose the room. The traveler can completely skip the front desk, unlock their door. They can message the front desk of the hotel in advance or while they're even in their room with any questions that they have. Explore the neighborhood. It shows area restaurants, shops, all the information around the hotel. And then even pull their folio. So when the guest checks out and your travelers are thinking, gee, I need to get a folio, a copy of my folio, they don't need to. It's right there on the app when they check out. These are, just wanted to touch on these. Our Hilton Honors loyalty program, we obviously know people aren't traveling, unfortunately. So we did several things to really make sure that those travelers that have been loyal to us aren't impacted because of the circumstances out of their control. We've extended status for 19 and 20. Also done rollover night extensions. So any nights that were earned in 2020, they all will roll over to 2021 status, because we know in 2020 folks just aren't traveling as much. Points that were supposed to expire between March and the 31st of December of this year, they're not expiring. We've gotten rid of that component. And then some of our weekend night rewards, a program that we have, those again that were set to expire have been extended. So trying to protect your travelers that have been loyal to us at Hilton and making sure that they get to maintain their benefits. I'm not going through all of these, one, because the majority of these are actually part of our Clean Stay program, but also to be mindful of time. We have, from a group's perspective, what we call Event Ready. And it's an entire program that we have that, again, incorporates all of the components of our Clean Stay for when groups and meetings are coming into our hotel. And we really work with the meeting planner to make sure that they understand the process and that they're able to effectively communicate that to the attendees. Everything from what they should expect if they're checking in, registration, parking, if there's luggage, to store luggage on the last day of a meeting or a conference. So there's a lot of components that are going into it where we're reviewing those and making sure that the meeting planners get those communicated out to the attendees. And then really the next piece and the last piece that impacts from a group's perspective is really around the banquet food and beverage solution. We realize, buffets are no longer something that we want people to be using, because again, there's a greater chance of transmission of any kind of virus. So the buffets are no longer available. However, we have in some cases where it'll be served, meaning there'll be a server that will be serving to the guests. Or some of the options that I've seen recently we did, which was a fantastic job, was the individual portions for all of the components of the meal for lunch or dinner. And so really, again, making sure that we're keeping everyone safe when they're attending meetings at any of our properties. Again, similar to the guest room, this is a meeting room, just showing you all the areas that get cleaned and sanitized. I think the main thing to point out is that it's really the presentation area where the podium, for example, and any items that are up there on the stage, AV equipment, that's also all cleaned and sanitized. So the presenters also know that it's the attendees as well as presenters are going to have that clean and sanitized environment. I said I'd do 12 minutes and I have a timer right here. I have 4 seconds left. So hopefully I did all right on timing there, and I'll even turn it off because it's ringing for me. But yeah, so hopefully you all are staying safe where you are, and I'm not sure if we still have time for questions, but I'll turn it back over.
John, thank you so much. You said it for 12 minutes and you hit the goalpost on that one. So right on. So that was great. So thank you, really thank you to all of our speakers. So listen, it's 10:58, and just to be respectful of time, we did get a few questions, but I think our best strategy right now, frankly, is to follow up with a few of those questions individually. We'll have your account manager, or we'll connect you with either Delta or with Enterprise or with Hilton to answer those questions directly. But I do want us to slow down before we close and say, first of all, thank you again to our speakers. Thank you for all the wonderful information and for the insights that you're sharing to help bring back confidence in the travel industry. So that was really helpful and very meaningful. Thank you to all of you who took the time to join us today. We sincerely appreciate that. Just a couple of closing comments. Number one, we really encourage you to share this information internally in your organization with your colleagues and with travelers, so they too feel comfortable with the safety and cleanliness protocols. And another best practice, we really encourage you to get other departments within your organization involved in the travel program, whether that's legal, whether that's HR, whether that's your risk team, so that everybody within your company is really engaged with the travel program. So I'll just conclude by saying thank you for your partnership. Thank you for joining us today. We will be sending out a survey, and I hope you'll take a moment and fill out that survey and help us improve these forums as we go forward. But thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Bill.